Greetings to all of you listening to my channel. Today's story begins on the Saturday after Thanksgiving, when I went to my husband's hometown for the holiday. My mother-in-law invited the whole family out for a lavish meal, but a restaurant employee whispered in my ear, "Pretend to use the restroom and run. It's a disaster waiting to happen." My name is Leah Harris. I'm from a small town in Ohio, the kind of place where people say you should mind your manners, speak respectfully, and always be considerate, so as not to step on anyone's toes. I moved to New York City for college and stayed, landing a job as an administrator at a large construction firm. My work might sound simple, but every day I was buried in contracts, invoices, and compliance reports. One wrong number, and I'd face the full wrath of my boss. As a result, I grew accustomed to clarity and transparency. Everything had to be documented and justified. I met Kevin Miller when my company was overhauling its electrical systems. He was a technician, tall and lean, with a demeanor as gentle as a quiet stream. I used to tease him, saying he looked so kind that people must take advantage of him all the time. He'd just scratch his head and smile. If someone wants a fight, it's better to just walk away. What I thought was a joke turned out to be his core principle. Avoid conflict whenever possible, as long as it keeps the peace. We dated for nearly 3 years before we got married. The wedding in Ohio was a modest affair at my family's home, focused on meaningful tradition rather than extravagance. My mother gave me a sapphire bracelet, a delicate thing with a deep blue stone. Her words were simple but heavy. "Hold on to this, Leah. No matter what happens, remember to hold on to your dignity." I've worn that bracelet since our wedding day, not as a showpiece, but as if I were wearing a promise on my wrist. My husband's family lives in a small town in West Virginia. My mother-in-law, Sharon Miller, is the type of person who lives and breathes for the approval of others. In her world, keeping up appearances is more vital than a meal, and the phrase "making a good impression" outweighs the actual feelings of her family. She always introduced me as her daughter-in-law from the city, even though I was just a small-town girl making a living in the metropolis. To her, New York City was a luxury item to be paraded before the neighbors. From my very first visit, I understood the family dynamic. I had barely stepped out of the car when I heard her announcing to a neighbor, as if presenting a prized possession, "There she is. My future daughter-in-law. Works in an office in New York City, you know." I offered a polite greeting. She nodded, but her eyes scanned me from head to toe before landing a soft, sharp jab. "Around here, you need to be mindful. We don't want people talking." Besides my husband, there was his younger brother, Kyle Miller. Kyle, a few years younger than me, was a fast talker. He was all "Leah, it's so great to see you," but his eyes were always calculating. He loved to boast about his connections and talk about how business was all about who you know. At one dinner, Kyle chuckled, "Leah, working at a big firm in the city, you must be making bank. You're gonna have to help Kevin upgrade his life, huh?" I just smiled, thinking to myself that a life upgraded by someone else's talk is probably an empty one. In 6 years of marriage, I didn't visit West Virginia often. It was partly the distance, and partly because every visit left me feeling as taut as a violin string. Sharon scrutinized everything, from how I greeted people to how I poured water, to my skills in the kitchen. Once, I wore a simple beige sweater. She sighed dramatically. "Why do you always dress so drably? People will think we're poor." I found it both absurd and heartbreaking. Wealth isn't defined by a sweater. But I knew that to her, that sweater was a public statement to the entire town. Kevin loved me. At least, I believed he did. He'd still help me with the dishes, quietly take my heavy bags, and remind me to take my allergy medicine when the seasons changed. But whenever his mother's words cut deep, he would pull me aside, his voice a whisper, as if afraid of being overheard. "Just let it go, Leah. Mom's getting older. Don't upset her." That phrase, "don't upset Mom," became a recurring theme, a lock on my own feelings and self-respect. One time, I was so frustrated that I asked him directly, "You're so afraid of upsetting your mom. Are you ever afraid of upsetting me?" He fell silent. The silence stretched so long I could hear the hum of the ceiling fan. Finally, he sighed. "If you're upset, I can comfort you. If Mom's upset, the whole house suffers." I laughed, a hollow sound. So, in his equation, a wife was someone who could be placated, while a mother was an authority that could never be crossed. That Thanksgiving, my company was closing out a major project. I was working like a dog until the Tuesday before the holiday. On Wednesday, I had just collapsed into bed when Kevin said, "Mom wants us to stay a little longer this year. We have guests coming on Saturday." and she wants to make a good impression. The phrase "make a good impression" sent a shiver down my spine. I instinctively touched the cool sapphire on my wrist, as if it were a reminder. Daughter, life as a wife isn't just about the kitchen. It's also about navigating traps. I'm not superstitious, but as the saying goes, experience is the best teacher. And living with this family taught me that sometimes wisdom is knowing when to retreat and when to hold your ground. I agreed to go, but I made one thing clear to Kevin. Anything involving money has to be completely transparent. I don't like ambiguity. He waved it off with a laugh. It's a holiday. Who's going to be ambiguous? You worry too much. I looked at his smile, but my heart felt no lighter. In his family, just for fun was often a cloak thrown over difficult situations, leaving me to deal with the uncomfortable reality. And for some reason, as I packed our Thanksgiving gifts, I had a nagging feeling this trip would be more than a simple family visit. On Wednesday morning, New York City was crisp and cold. The streets weren't empty yet, but my heart already felt a certain hollowness. I woke early to tidy up the small altar in our apartment where I keep a picture of my late father, lit a stick of incense, and quietly wrapped the last of the gifts. My mother called. "Are you eating properly, dear? Don't overwork yourself." I assured her I was fine, though my eyes kept darting to Kevin on the balcony, on the phone, his voice a low murmur. When he came back inside, he tried to look casual, but I knew instantly something was up. "Was that your mom again?" I asked. He hesitated. "Yeah. She was just asking when we'd get there. She said there will be a lot of guests this year, so the house needs to be perfect." I tied the ribbon on a gift box tighter than necessary and gave a small, wry smile. Perfect as in we sweep the porch and set the table, or perfect in her version of the word. Kevin flinched. He hated when I was so direct, but I was past the point of beating around the bush. Honestly, if it were just about cooking and cleaning, I could handle it. I was a daughter-in-law. I understood my role. But the challenges with his family were different, rooted in something intangible they called appearances. It had no physical form, yet it was so heavy it bent everyone's back. I vividly remember my first post-wedding Thanksgiving in West Virginia. The moment I got out of the car, still fumbling with my suitcase, Sharon was already in the yard, proclaiming loudly to the neighbors. "Here she is, my daughter-in-law from the city. Works in a big office, smart as a whip." I greeted her, and the neighbors. Before I could even catch my breath, she pulled me into the kitchen, pointed at a basket of green beans, and said in a tone that was both instructive and judgmental, "This isn't New York, you know. A daughter-in-law here needs to be capable, resourceful, and observant. You don't want people saying we brought home a guest instead of a wife." At dinner that night, I served her a piece of turkey first. She nodded, but then pursed her lips. "This piece is a bit dry. Is this how they eat in the city?" Before I could answer, she turned to my husband. "See, Kevin? You can marry a woman, but you still have to train her. An untrained wife will end up walking all over the family." I sat there feeling like a student being graded, not a family member celebrating a holiday. Subsequent visits were even more challenging. One year, I wore a dark coat to the local market, thinking it would be practical. Sharon sighed like a leaking tire. "Why do you always wear such dark colors? It's a holiday. You look like you're in mourning." I forced a smile, thinking to myself that the color of my coat had nothing to do with our good fortune. But I kept quiet, still clinging to the idea that patience was a virtue. The problem was, all my patience brought no peace, only a diminishing sense of self. The breaking point was a few years ago when I brought small gifts for Kevin's relatives, as he had suggested. A few bottles of decent wine, some gourmet chocolates, and gift cards for the kids. I kept it modest and tasteful. But Sharon pulled me into a corner of the yard, her voice low but sharp. "As the wife of the eldest son, you need to understand appearances. They'll all be comparing. A daughter-in-law from the city, and this is all you bring." I was stunned. I brought what we could afford. And besides, the holidays are about the sentiment. She cut me off. "Sentiment has a price tag. Nobody remembers your nice words. They only remember what you gave them." Her words were like a splash of ice water. I stood there for a moment before turning back inside. That night, I asked Kevin, "Did you hear what your mother said? Why does she treat everything like a competition?" Kevin wrapped an arm around me, his voice taking on that familiar, placating tone. "She's just obsessed with appearances. Leah, just let it go. It's the holidays." I was so frustrated I laughed out loud. Are the holidays some magical shield? Does it's the holidays mean we have to tolerate anything? He fell silent. He always fell silent when I touched on his weakness, his mother. And then there was Kyle, his brother, who was slick in a different way. Kyle never criticized me directly. He just planted seeds of doubt with what sounded like jokes. One afternoon, he was sipping tea, looking me over. "Leah, you must be a pro with contracts and paperwork. You'll have to show me how to draft a killer agreement sometime." I gave a polite smile. He added with a wink, "And with all your connections in the city, don't forget about me. In this world, it's all about who you know." The words made my skin crawl. I don't mind ambitious people, but I can't stand those who see others as rungs on a ladder. One evening, I overheard him on the phone on the porch, his voice full of excitement. "Don't worry. We're going to have a huge crowd this weekend. I can pull it off. My sister-in-law from New York, she's a big spender." I froze behind the door. Big spender. It felt like a label being glued to my forehead. I stepped out. Kyle jumped, then quickly laughed it off. "Oh, hey, Leah. I was just kidding around." I went back to my room, my heart pounding. I told Kevin about it later. He just frowned. "Kyle's just full of hot air. He says things for effect." "For effect on who?" I asked. "And who pays the price for that effect?" Kevin sighed again, his voice dropping. "Don't overthink it. It's the holidays. Don't make things difficult for Mom." There it was again. Don't make things difficult for Mom. I looked at him and suddenly pictured that phrase as a sign hanging over their front door, forcing everyone who entered to bow their head. On Wednesday morning, as I placed a basket of fruit on our small table, I turned to Kevin and spoke slowly. "Kevin, I don't want to make your mother unhappy, but I can't keep silencing myself while people say whatever they want and label me however they please." He looked at me, his expression weary. "What do you want, Leah?" "I want respect," I replied. "Respect for my words, for my work, and if there are any expenses or plans to entertain, I want them to be clear. Honesty is better than cleverness. I'd rather be straightforward and avoid being misunderstood." Kevin was quiet for a long time, then gave a slight nod. I knew that for him, it was a major concession. "Okay," he said. "I get it. I'll pay attention." I didn't expect when I'll pay attention to change a lifetime of family habits, but at least it was something different. Outside, the sound of a neighbor testing their Christmas lights crackled in the air. People were getting into the holiday spirit, while I felt like I was walking into a test of character, and I was the one being tested the most. The Tuesday before Thanksgiving, the entire administrative department was a pressure cooker. Phones rang off the hook. Papers flew. Everyone wanted to clear their desks before the holiday, so all the last-minute paperwork landed on mine. My boss walked by and dropped a comment that made my stomach clench. "One mistake in that file, and you'll be writing reports the day after Thanksgiving." I gritted my teeth, scanning every line, my eyes so tired that the numbers seemed to dance. It was late when I finally left the office. The late November wind whipped at my collar, cold and sobering. I called Kevin. "Let's get the rest of the shopping done tomorrow." He grunted in agreement, as if the holiday was just another date on the calendar. On Wednesday, I dragged him to a market near our apartment. The pre-holiday rush was in full swing, the air thick with the scent of pine wreaths and roasting nuts. Just smelling it felt like the holidays. I bought a few boxes of gourmet chocolates, some nice artisanal tea, and a jar of ginger preserves for Sharon, plus red envelopes with crisp bills for the kids. I didn't want to be flashy, but I also didn't want to be accused of being a cheap city girl. Being a daughter-in-law was like that: you take one step, but you have to think 3 steps ahead. Kevin watched me, sighing. "You think about things too much." I smiled. "I think them through now so I don't have to second-guess them later." He tried to soothe me. "Mom just wants to have a nice time." I didn't reply. In his family, a nice time was often synonymous with impressing people, and impressions were always more expensive than feelings. Back home, I laid everything out on the bed, sorting items into different bags. Gifts, snacks for the drive, a small first aid kit with medicine and pain relievers. I even wrote a little note with our departure time, route, and destination address. Kevin laughed. "You're going to your in-laws, not on a business trip." "Being prepared calms the nerves," I retorted. But no matter how prepared I was, a knot remained in my stomach. That evening, my mother called. Her voice was soft, but her advice was firm. As a daughter-in-law, be patient, but don't let people walk all over you. Then she repeated her old saying, poor in pocket, but rich in character. She asked quietly, "You're still wearing the bracelet, aren't you?" I twisted my wrist. The cool sapphire felt reassuring against my skin. "I'm still wearing it, Mom." She murmured her approval. and that sound felt like another layer of armor. On Wednesday night, Sharon called Kevin. He took the call on the balcony, but I could still hear bits and pieces. Get here by Saturday morning. We have guests. It has to be perfect. Don't let people talk. He came back inside, forcing a cheerful tone. Mom reminded us to get an early start. Who are the guests? I asked. He avoided my eyes. Some relatives and a few of Kyle's friends. I put down the scissors I was using. I'm not afraid of guests. I'm afraid of the kind of guests where we have to put on a show and then pay the price for it. He said quietly, I'll handle it. Don't worry. I didn't want to argue on the eve of our trip. I just opened my wallet, counted my cash, checked my cards, and tucked away some smaller bills. I was suddenly reminded of the saying, it's not what you give, but how you give it. Since his family seemed to measure everything in dollars, my how was likely to be misinterpreted. On Thanksgiving morning, Kevin and I had a quiet moment in our apartment. He said a quick, silent prayer of thanks. Mine was longer. I prayed for peace and for my own strength. Fireworks from a distant celebration lit up the sky, beautiful but fleeting. I told myself that some things shine brightest by being protected. Thanksgiving Day and Friday, we stayed in New York and visited a few friends. A close colleague, hearing I was going to West Virginia, texted me. I have a cousin who's a sheriff's deputy in that county. Save his number, just in case you have car trouble or need directions. She sent the name, Mark. I thanked her and saved the contact, hoping not to use it but not deleting it either. Better safe than sorry. On Saturday morning, the New York air was bitingly cold. We left for the bus terminal early. The station smelled of exhaust and hurried goodbyes. Even on a holiday weekend, everyone was in a rush. I got a window seat. Kevin sat beside me, clutching the bag of gifts, his eyes already drowsy. As the bus left the city and headed into the mountains, the wind battered the windows, and the bumpy road jostled us in our seats. I pulled my scarf tighter, looking out at the rolling hills and low-hanging clouds. The scenery was beautiful, but my heart was uneasy. I felt like I was approaching a gate, and on the other side lay a world of tradition, appearances, and things I couldn't yet name. Kevin turned to me. Are you cold? I shook my head. I'm not cold. I just feel a little suffocated. He squeezed my hand gently. I'm here. By late afternoon, the bus pulled into the small town. I checked the time and glanced at a text Kyle had sent that morning. Get here quick, sis. It's gonna be epic this year, followed by a winking emoji. I didn't reply. I just tightened my grip on my purse, reminding myself, when you enter someone else's territory, you must always secure a line of retreat. Not to run, but to avoid being cornered. The bus hissed to a stop. I stepped off, and the cold mountain air hit me like a slap, so sharp it was strangely clarifying. I pulled my sleeve down over my wrist, my other hand clutching the gift bag. In that moment, I understood my mother's words perfectly. Patience is for maintaining peace, not for losing yourself. The bus had barely pulled away when I heard the sound of laughter and chatter from the yard. My in-laws' house was spacious, with a green-painted iron gate. Inside, several pots of late-blooming chrysanthemums stood on the porch, their stems bare but the flowers bursting with color. The mountain holidays had a unique chill, one that seemed to seep into your bones, making everyone speak a little louder as if to ward it off. I had just walked through the gate when Sharon came bustling out of the house. She was wearing lipstick and a new coat that still smelled of the store. She didn't hug me. She just grabbed my wrist and pulled me forward, like a merchant showing off a prized item. Well, my daughter-in-law from the city has finally arrived, she announced boisterously, her eyes sweeping over the guests in the yard. Works at a big company, you know. Very smart, very proper. I flushed and bowed my head slightly. Hello, Mom. Hello, everyone. A neighboring woman chuckled. The city girl is so pale, isn't she? Sharon shot back immediately, her tone triumphant. Of course she is. She works in an air-conditioned office all day. I forced myself to keep smiling. In that instant, I felt I was no longer Leah Harris. I was the daughter-in-law from the city, a label for people to affix, a benchmark for comparison. Sharon led me into the house, talking nonstop. When you're here, you follow our ways, you hear? We have a lot of guests today, so don't be clueless. People will talk. I murmured a quiet yes. Kevin followed with the bags, a placating smile on his face. Kyle popped out from the kitchen, his hair gelled up, a lighter in his hand. He saw me and grinned. Leah's here. It's going to be a party tonight. I nodded. Hi, Kyle. We just got in. His eyes darted to the gift bags, and he winked. That's my sister-in-law for you. Even the bags look expensive. He said it like a joke, but I heard the hook hidden in his laughter. Inside, the main room's buffet table was laden with cakes, liquor, and fruit. Sharon urged, "Go change, then come down and help me in the kitchen." A new bride should be busy. Makes the house feel warm. I took off my coat, tied my hair back, and went to the kitchen. It smelled of wood smoke and fried onions, a scent both familiar and stifling. A pot of chili was simmering. A roasted turkey sat on the counter, and next to it was a bowl of freshly washed salad greens. I asked softly, "What can I do to help, Mom?" Sharon gave me a sideways glance. "Chop these onions for the casserole. 7 plates worth. Make it neat. I know you're used to fancy food in the city, but here, we have to be quick. When guests arrive, they don't wait." I picked up the knife. The moment it touched the cutting board, she let a comment drift through the air like a puff of smoke. City girls can be a bit high maintenance. Too much of that, and people will laugh at us. I took a breath and replied quietly, "Yes, ma'am, I'll be mindful." Sharon's gaze dropped to my wrist, her eyes fixating on the blue sapphire bracelet. She didn't say anything right away, but her stare made my wrist feel colder. I instinctively pulled my sleeve down a little, a small movement she immediately caught. She smirked. "Why are you hiding it? If it's beautiful, show it off. That must have cost a pretty penny, huh?" "It was a gift from my mother," I said concisely. She drew out a long O, as if she were making a mental note. As noon approached, guests flowed in and out. Some came to offer holiday wishes, others to chat about the harvest over a cup of cider. Each time someone new arrived, Sharon would push me forward. "This is my daughter-in-law. Works in New York. Very capable." I greeted person after person, my smile aching. A distant cousin looked me over and said, half joking, "A city girl like you probably doesn't know how to cook a big country meal, right?" Before I could respond, Sharon intercepted. "If she doesn't know, she'll learn. You have to learn to be a part of this family." Kevin came into the kitchen and whispered, "Are you tired?" I shook my head. "I'm fine." He picked up a tray to help me, but Sharon immediately snapped. "A son has no place bustling around the kitchen. Let the women do it. A man's place is out front, entertaining guests, making his mother proud." Kevin gave an embarrassed smile and withdrew his hands. I watched him, a pang of disappointment in my chest, not because he was clumsy, but because he retreated so quickly. The main meal was served in the dining room: turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, and a salad. I sat in my designated spot, offering food to everyone. Sharon took a bite and pronounced, "The gravy's a bit bland. People here like bold flavors. Warms you up." I smiled. "I'll keep that in mind for next time." Kyle, chewing loudly, grinned. "Leah's probably used to all that health food in the city. You gotta eat hearty up here. Get your strength up for our big night out." "What night out?" I asked. Kyle winked. "The guys and I were thinking of taking Mom out for a fancy dinner. There's a new restaurant downtown, with private rooms and everything. It's the holidays, sis. You gotta live a little." At the word fancy, Sharon's eyes lit up. "That's right. We should start the new year in style. We can't have people thinking we're poor." I set my fork down. My voice was still soft, but direct. "That sounds fun, but we should find a place with clear, transparent pricing, just to be safe." The entire table paused. Sharon looked at me as if I'd said something terribly inappropriate. She forced a laugh, thin as a slice of onion. "Oh, for heaven's sake, it's a holiday. And you're talking about prices. You have to be more open-minded to receive blessings, you know." Kyle chimed in. "Yeah, Leah, you worry too much. My friend owns the place. We're all friends there. It's no big deal." Kevin placed a piece of turkey on my plate, whispering, "Just eat." Then he turned to his mother. "Have some more, Mom?" His change of subject was as swift as a gear shift. I knew he wanted to quash the awkwardness. I didn't say more, but inside me, a knot tightened. People could call me a penny pincher, but I dreaded the kind of outing where you only find out what you owe when the bill arrives. As the afternoon wore on, the guests thinned out. I cleared the dishes, my hands turning red from the cold water. Sharon passed by and dropped another comment, half instruction, half command. "Tomorrow, for our dinner out, make sure you dress nicely. A daughter-in-law from the city can't look sloppy. People will talk." I said yes once more. The sapphire on my wrist remained silent, a constant reminder. In that smoky kitchen, I saw with stark clarity how some families offer sweet holiday greetings on the porch, while inside, they're weighing each other on a very cold scale. After washing the last dish, I dried my hands, but my mind was still unsettled. Outside, the chatter had faded, leaving only the sound of the wind rustling through the bare branches of the dogwood tree. Sharon went to bed earlier than usual, but it wasn't the weariness of a host. It was the quiet of someone scheming. I knew because as I passed the living room, I heard her whispering to Kyle, just loud enough for family to hear, but for outsiders to mistake as casual chat. She has to look impeccable tomorrow. A shabby daughter-in-law from New York would be a disgrace. Her eyes flickered toward me as if I were a piece of clothing. Kyle chuckled. Don't worry, Mom. I've booked the room downtown. It's at my buddy Danny's place. I guarantee you'll make a grand impression. I didn't stop to argue. I walked straight to our room, closed the door, and told myself, reacting at the last second is a losing game. You have to plan ahead. Our bedroom was a small room off the back of the house, near the kitchen. An old calendar with curled corners hung on the wall. I changed my clothes, rubbing my hands together for warmth. Kevin came in, set down a gift bag, and sat on the bed, exhaling as if he'd just completed a long day's mission. That's over with, he said. Today went smoothly, huh? I looked at him and asked quietly, directly, what part of that felt smooth to you? Kevin avoided my gaze. Well, the guests are gone. Mom's happy, and you didn't argue with anyone. I laughed, but the sound caught in my throat. So, smooth means I'm not allowed to say anything. Just because I didn't argue doesn't mean I didn't hear. Kevin frowned slightly. He hated being questioned like this at night. But if I didn't speak now, I wouldn't sleep for a week. I sat on the edge of the bed, my voice low. I see your mom repeating the phrase, making an impression. I hear Kyle talking about a restaurant and booking a room. I just want to ask one thing. Who is paying for dinner tomorrow? Kevin answered quickly. We're just going out to have fun. Mom wants to, so we'll indulge her for one night. I looked him straight in the eye. Indulge her with whose money? And with whose dignity? He paused, then tried to deflect. Don't worry so much. I'm here. I shook my head slowly. I'm here sounds nice, but you've said that before. And in the end, I was still the one left swallowing my frustration. I don't want everything pushed onto me, only for you to say, just be patient for the sake of peace. Kevin's voice grew heavy. Keep your voice down, Leah. Mom might hear. I flinched. I glanced at the thin door and felt a wave of despair. Are you afraid of Mom hearing, or are you afraid of Mom being upset? He answered reflexively. Yes, let's not upset Mom. It's the holiday weekend. Making a scene will ruin everything. That phrase again, clicking into place like a lock. I felt a profound sense of weariness, but I tried one last time to be reasonable. Kevin, they say blood is thicker than water. I understand you love your mother, but we are a family too. You can't keep using your mother's potential unhappiness as the standard for everything, while my unhappiness is just something to be soothed away with a few words. He looked at me, his eyes red with fatigue and the stress of being forced to choose. What do you want me to do? Argue with my own mother? My voice was quiet but firm. I'm not asking you to argue. I'm asking you to stand in the middle and say one clear thing. Before we eat tomorrow, we ask for the prices. If anything is unclear, we get up and leave. Can you say that? He hesitated. His hesitation was an admission of fear. Not fear of me, but fear of losing face in front of his mother and brother. Just then, we heard footsteps outside, then Sharon's voice, loud and carrying, as if she were calling to someone down the street. Oh, yes. We're all going out for a fancy dinner tomorrow. My daughter-in-law from the city is treating. That's how you start the new year right. I froze. I whipped my head around to look at Kevin. Did you hear that? His face went pale. He shot up, went to the door, and peeked through the crack. He didn't dare open it. Just a sliver, like a man afraid of a draft, or afraid of the truth. My chest felt tight, as if a hand were squeezing it. My daughter-in-law from the city is treating. A statement meant to sound like a boast, but it was a brand, a seal. Once said in front of others, it would be difficult to retract without a loss of face, and Sharon would never allow that. Kevin came back, his voice small. She's just saying it to be festive. I cut him off. For the first time, I didn't want to hear the word festive. Festive? By putting my name in other people's mouths like that. How is that festive? Kevin, I'm begging you. Tomorrow, you have to clarify this with your mother. No one has promised to treat anyone. If she wants to treat, she should say so. If she wants us to treat, she needs to ask us properly. Kevin looked at me, his face a mask of conflict. Finally, he gave a faint nod. But it was a weak nod, the kind of gesture meant to end a conversation, not to start an action. I didn't push him further. It would only make him retreat. I stood up and smoothed the blanket on the bed. In the corner, my suitcase remained unpacked. I didn't open it. I just adjusted the sapphire bracelet on my wrist, stroking it gently as if to feel my mother's advice, and sighed. Outside, Kyle was laughing with someone, his voice boisterous. "Don't worry. I'll take care of everything tomorrow." Kyle's "I'll take care of it" sounded like laughter over a smoldering fire. I suddenly thought of the phrase, a smiling mouth but a lying heart. Sometimes, the loudest laugh hides the biggest deceit. That night, Kevin slept with his back to me, likely unable to sleep either. I didn't cry. My mind was just running through a checklist, like at work, what to believe, what not to believe, what to protect. I told myself I could be patient to keep the peace, but I could not be patient to the point where people grew accustomed to disrespecting me. That kind of patience leaves no room for retreat. I closed my eyes, listening to the mountain wind whistle through the cracks in the window frame. The holidays here were cold, but the greatest chill wasn't outside. It was the feeling of being placed on a scale, waiting for someone else to decide my worth. I woke earlier than usual, not from excitement, but because a persistent tapping in my chest kept reminding me not to let my guard down. Outside, a thin layer of frost covered the chrysanthemums, and the stone patio was icy. On a mountain holiday, the sun rises, but the wind still feels like it's full of needles. As I was washing my face, I heard Sharon's voice from the living room, as loud and clear as a bell. "Kyle, where's my good coat? The one we bought last week. I need to wear that one to look chic." I glanced out and saw she was already dressed in an outfit completely different from yesterday's. A long coat, a new scarf, her hair neatly styled, and bright red lipstick. She wasn't dressed for visiting relatives. She was dressed for a stage performance. Kevin emerged behind me, yawning. "Mom's up early." Sharon turned on her heel, her eyes gleaming. "It's the holidays, son. You have to start the new year looking your best. We're going out for a fancy lunch today. Let people see this family knows how to enjoy the finer things." Kyle appeared from the kitchen, phone in hand, a wide grin on his face. "I've booked the room, Mom. A private one. It's at my friend Danny's place. All the important people go there." The words "private room" sent a chill down my spine. Private meant isolated. It meant if something went wrong, it would be harder to call for help. I kept my voice gentle. "Going out sounds like fun. But are we going somewhere with a menu and clear prices, Mom?" Sharon waved her hand dismissively, as if shooing a fly. "Oh, there you go again, counting pennies. It's a holiday. Who asked for prices? It ruins the fun. A daughter-in-law from the city being so stingy, people will talk." Before I could reply, Kyle interjected. "Don't worry, Leah. Danny's place is great. Even the local politicians eat there. Just show up, order whatever you want, and don't think twice." I looked at Kyle. His mouth said, "Don't think twice," but his eyes sparkled with the anticipation of a good show. I just gave a small nod, avoiding an argument. When the script has already been written, saying too much just makes you the villain. I went to my room to change. I chose a simple but neat outfit, nothing too flashy. In the mirror, I pulled my sleeve down to cover the sapphire bracelet. Not out of shame, but because I had a feeling that today, it would be seen as a convertible asset. Kevin stood behind me, his voice low. "Why are you so tense?" "It's just a meal." I turned to him and spoke slowly. "Do you remember what I said last night? We have to be clear about things." He avoided my eyes, fumbling with his shirt buttons. "Yeah, I remember." But his remember sounded like a promise hanging by a thread. I didn't cling to it. I clung to myself. Out in the living room, Sharon looked me up and down, nodding. That'll do. But you should show off that bracelet. It looks more elegant that way. People will see it and know this family is well off." I pursed my lips. "I'm just used to wearing it like this." Sharon smiled, then said something that made my heart stop. "Remember to bring your wallet, dear. If we come up a little short, you can help me out. It would be so embarrassing to come up short at the register. People would laugh us out of town." Her words were light as a feather, but hit me like a stone. Asterisk. If we come up a little short times meant she was already anticipating it. Asterisk. You can help me out times meant she had already assigned me the role of guarantor. I looked at Kevin. He was staring at the floor, pretending not to hear. I was suddenly reminded of the old saying, a good cow is the start of a fortune. For Sharon, perhaps a good daughter-in-law was the start of her social standing, but my cost. Kyle urged, let's go, Mom. We'll lose the good room if we're late. Sharon turned to Kevin. Drive carefully. And when we get to town, let's swing by Mr. Thompson's house. Just so he can see us all going out for a fancy meal. I almost laughed out loud. Even a meal had to be a spectacle. Some people don't live to eat well. They live for the approval of others. The car started. The road to town wound around the mountainside. A steep drop on one side and a rock face on the other. The wind howled against the windshield. Inside, Sharon talked nonstop, as if silence would diminish her enthusiasm. Everyone's been asking me if my daughter-in-law from the city was here yet. I told them, yes, and she's so lovely. We have to dine in style today. Who wants to eat leftovers at home? People will laugh. Kyle chimed in. Exactly. Mom? Danny's place has a live lobster tank. You can get a video of it. Everyone will be so impressed. I gripped my purse, my mind picturing a phone camera pointed at me. A video. That meant everything today could be turned into evidence. Evidence to make me carry the burden. Kevin drove in silence. I glanced at him and saw the muscle in his jaw clenching. He probably knew something was wrong, but his habit of keeping the peace was ingrained. So, he just drove a little faster, as if arriving would magically smooth everything over. I wasn't waiting for things to smooth over. I quietly took out my phone, checked the battery, and opened my contacts, scrolling to Mark. My finger hovered over the name. I didn't call, but just looking at it felt like having a life preserver nearby. When we arrived in town, the main street was lined with brightly lit storefronts, holiday music blaring from speakers. As our car pulled up, a young valet ran out, bowing slightly. Welcome, Mrs. Miller's party? He asked, his tone practiced. I froze. He had used my mother-in-law's name, as if he'd been briefed. Sharon beamed, adjusting her scarf. Yes, show us to your best room. Kyle glanced at me and winked. See? I told you we were regulars. I followed them, my heart growing colder with each step. A single thought was crystal clear in my mind. Asterisk. This is not a coincidence. Asterisk. They had prepared everything, from the greeting at the door to the best room. I didn't look back. I just pulled my sleeve down a little further, so the sapphire bracelet was snug against my skin, a silent reminder to protect myself. They could stage a party for their own honor, but I would not let my own honor become the payment. The glass doors of the restaurant slid open, and a blast of cold air conditioning hit my face. I stepped inside, the sound of my shoes echoing on the marble floor. My steps were steady, calm. In my mind, an old proverb surfaced. Asterisk, know your enemy and know yourself. And you can fight 100 battles without disaster. Asterisk, I didn't need to win. I just needed not to lose to my own gullibility. The glass doors hissed shut behind me, cutting off the street noise. The restaurant was chilled to an almost uncomfortable degree, raising goosebumps on my arms. The faint smell of a seafood tank mingled with the sharp scent of floor cleaner, an odor that was supposed to be sophisticated, but was just unpleasant. Soft, yellow lights from wall sconces cast a flattering glow on everyone. A hostess led us down a short hallway to a heavy wooden door with a small, elegant plaque, VIP 3. I glanced at the sign. The VIP wasn't as unnerving as the feeling that every detail here had been prearranged. Right this way, Mrs. Miller. Please, the young woman said with a bow. Sharon swept in first, a triumphant smile on her face, as if she'd just won a card game. Kyle followed, phone already out, panning the room. This place is amazing, Mom. Kevin walked beside me, his hand instinctively resting on my elbow, but his touch was tense and cold, like a man trying to balance on a windy bridge. The VIP room was larger than I expected. A round table was covered with a crisp white tablecloth, set with porcelain plates, tall wine glasses, and napkins folded into fans. In one corner, a large glass tank held live lobsters, crabs, and fish, swimming slowly. The overhead light made the lobster shells gleam. The moment she sat down, Sharon exclaimed, "Now, this is how you do it. Starting the new year in style." She spoke loudly, as if to ensure the room itself registered her status. Just then, the door opened, and a man in his 40s with a slight paunch and slick-back hair walked in, wearing a white shirt and a wide smile. "Well, look who it is, Mrs. Miller. So good to see you." He shook Sharon's hand warmly, then turned and clapped Kyle on the shoulder. My man Kyle, bringing in the A-listers. I love it. Kyle laughed. Leah, this is Danny, the owner. Danny's a good friend of mine. Danny turned to me, his eyes quickly scanning my face, then dropping to my wrist, lingering for half a second on the bracelet. It was long enough to make my skin crawl, but his voice was syrupy sweet. A pleasure to meet you. You must be the sister-in-law from New York City. I can tell you're a sophisticated lady. I nodded. Hello. I kept my voice neutral, hiding my discomfort. Words are free, but here, they felt like baited hooks. Just order whatever you like today, Danny said with a grand gesture. It's a VIP party for the holidays. I'll give you a great deal. That phrase, a great deal, made me wary. What did great mean? A great deal for whom? I didn't like words without numbers. A waitress placed a thick, leather-bound menu in front of each of us. I opened it. The first page had a disclaimer in fine print. Asterisk prices subject to change. Posted at the counter. Custom selections available for VIP guests. I flipped through the pages. The more I looked, the stranger it became. Some pages had small pieces of paper pasted over the prices. Other prices were smudged or faded. The dishes had grand names. Emperor's Lobster, Gilded Abalone, Imperial Grouper. But next to them, the price was either blank or simply said, "Inquire with staff." I looked up and asked the waitress politely, "Excuse me, can you tell me the price per pound for this and what's included in the VIP combo?" The waitress gave a tight-lipped smile, glancing nervously at Danny. "Ma'am, just enjoy your meal. I'll tally everything up for you at the end." I frowned slightly. I need to know the price beforehand so we can order appropriately. Her smile remained, but it was stiff. "Prices fluctuate during the holidays, ma'am. Please, don't worry." I turned to Kevin. He met my eyes for a second, then looked down at the table, avoiding my gaze. His avoidance irritated me, but I suppressed it. Losing my temper in this room would not help. Sharon snatched the menu from my hands with a scoff. "Oh, Leah, stop with all the questions. You're ruining the mood. It's a holiday, and you're acting like an accountant. Who's going to want to eat?" She then turned to Danny. "Bring us the lobster, the abalone. Whatever is the most impressive. We have to make a good impression." Kyle chimed in enthusiastically. "Danny, my man, just bring us the VIP combo. 2 lobsters, a platter of abalone, and a king crab for my mom to get a video of." Danny clapped his hands together. "Perfect. Go big or go home for the holidays. I'll get it right out." I heard VIP combo, a dish not priced on the menu, and my stomach sank. But I sat up straight and said nothing. I reminded myself of the old adage. Asterisk. Save your wits for outsiders, not for your own family. Asterisk. But here, the outsiders and the insiders were working together. In less than 10 minutes, the first course arrived. A grand seafood platter with bright red prawns and trussed-up crabs, accompanied by a decanter of amber-colored liquid. Kyle raised his glass. A toast. To Mom's health, to Leah's success, and to Kevin's promotion. Sharon was delighted, her phone out, recording everything. "This is how you get good luck for the new year. By dining in style." She aimed the camera directly at my face, her voice booming. My daughter-in-law from New York is so capable and thoughtful. I was caught in the frame, unable to move or object. I just smiled and offered the most neutral phrase I could. "I hope everyone enjoys the meal." After speaking, I took a small bite, partly to avoid looking rude and partly to keep my mouth busy. But in my mind, a clock had started ticking. Every word could be edited. Every raised glass could become a pretext. Another dish arrived, then another. A platter appeared that I hadn't heard anyone order, placed on the table with practiced efficiency. I noticed a pattern. Every time Sharon laughed loudly or Kyle cheered, a waitress would enter with a new dish. It was a rhythm so regular it felt like a production line. I discreetly took out my phone under the table, pretending to text holiday greetings, but I was actually taking quick photos. I snapped a picture of the menu with the pasted-over prices, the page with the prices subject to change disclaimer, and the reflection of the VIP3 sign in a nearby glass panel. I was subtle, just a quick click before the screen went dark, my hand resting innocently on my lap. Danny came in and out, one moment laughing with Sharon, the next whispering to Kyle. Once, he stepped out to take a call, his voice low. I only caught a few words. "Yeah, keep it coming. Don't worry." Then he returned, his smile as bright as ever. I took a bite of shrimp. It tasted like paper. I wasn't hungry, I felt like I was sitting in a room full of shiny objects, lacking the one thing that mattered: clarity. Kevin placed some food on my plate, whispering, "Eat something. You look tired." "I'm fine," I replied softly. I looked at him and murmured, just for him to hear, "Do you remember what I said?" He froze, his lips parting slightly. "Yeah." Another round of clinking glasses. Sharon laughed. Kyle boasted, "Now times this times is a holiday," and Danny played the part of the generous host. I maintained a polite smile, but I had already built a wall inside me. I knew that this kind of forced merriment often came with a hidden price tag, one that someone else had already decided I would pay. I stopped looking at the food. I started watching the people. The way Kyle kept cheering, the way Sharon preened for her videos every time a new platter arrived, the way Danny appeared at just the right moments, like the host of the entire charade. A thought came to me, asterisk, too much fun breeds suspicion. Asterisk, and my suspicion wasn't paranoia. It was because everything was unfolding too smoothly to be natural. The wine was poured again. A holiday toast for good fortune, Danny announced. Kyle clinked glasses with Kevin. "Drink up, big brother. Keep Leah happy." Kevin forced a smile and took a sip, his eyes avoiding mine. I didn't blame him in that moment. I knew that in this sealed room, the weakest one would be crushed first. Just as I was trying to figure out how to ask for the price again, the waitress from before, whose name tag read Sarah, walked by with a tray. She was a young woman in her 20s, with a small face and eyes that constantly darted toward the door. She set a dish down and then, as if by accident, dropped a napkin right next to my hand. As I bent to pick it up, she bent down too, and her voice, thin as a thread, whispered in my ear, "Ma'am, listen. They do this to people during the holidays. Don't argue in here. They have people watching, and they'll lock the door." A cold dread washed over me. My hand, holding the napkin, froze. Sarah didn't look at me for long. She added one more sentence, as if afraid she'd be caught. "I've seen it happen. A woman was forced to pay and left here sobbing. You remind me of her." I looked up. Sarah was already walking away, her professional smile back in place. I watched her go, my heart pounding with a mixture of fear and anger. Fear, because my instincts had been right. Anger, because they had turned a holiday into a trap, preying on people's pride. Asterisk. If you've been following the story this far on Serene Sunset, please give us a like and leave a comment. Stay tuned, because the twist at the end will leave my entire family-in-law stunned. If you were in my shoes, what would you do when cornered with an absurd bill? Let me know in the comments. Will I be able to escape this trap? Asterisk. I took a deep breath and forced my expression back to normal. In the room, Sharon was laughing, and Kyle was shouting, "Danny, bring on the next course." Danny replied instantly, "Coming right up," and shot a quick glance in my direction. I used the napkin to wipe my hands, my mind racing. If I argued now, I would be cast as the party pooper, in a party where they wanted me to play the host. I had to leave the table, get outside, and make a call before they really did lock the door. I put down my chopsticks and gave a weak smile. "Excuse me, everyone, I need to use the restroom. I think I drank too much cold water." Sharon glanced at me. "Hurry back. We're having fun." Kyle waved. "Go ahead, Leah. I'll order something else to warm you up while you're gone." The thought of him ordering more made me want to laugh, but it would have been a bitter laugh. I walked out of the VIP room. The hallway was long, dimly lit with yellow lights, and colder than it was outside. I walked straight ahead, not looking to the side, afraid that any hesitation would attract a follower. Inside the restroom, I locked the door. My hands were trembling slightly, but I refused to panic. Panicking was a death sentence. I took out my phone, my heart beating like a drum, but my fingers were steady. I opened my contacts and found Mark, the deputy my colleague had recommended. I sent a single, concise text, like I was writing a report. "Mark, this is Leah Harris. I'm at the Gilded Perch restaurant in town, VIP room 3. I believe they're setting up a bill trap, and I was just warned they might lock the door and force payment. If I'm not out soon, can you please check on this?" I attached my current location and quickly took a photo of the VIP 3 sign I'd snapped earlier, along with another one showing the security camera on the ceiling. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just needed evidence, so no one could twist my words. My hands were still shaking, but my mind was sharp. I remembered my mother's advice. Asterisk, hold on to your dignity, asterisk. Dignity wasn't about shouting the loudest. It was about not letting anyone put a noose around your neck. I splashed cold water on my face and looked in the mirror. My face was pale, but my eyes were different. They no longer held the look of someone willing to endure for the sake of peace. I pulled my sleeve over my sapphire bracelet and whispered to myself, "Stay calm. The calmer you are, the better your chances." Before leaving, I took one more deep breath, unlocked the door, and stepped back into the hallway. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses drifted from the VIP room. I composed my face into a soft expression and walked back at a measured pace, slow enough not to arouse suspicion. My mind was focused on a single strategy: return to the table, act like nothing happened, and stall for time until help arrived. I pushed open the door to the VIP room, a polite smile already on my face. But in that exact moment, I saw Kyle stand up, sling his arm around Kevin's shoulders, and announce loudly, "Come on, big bro, let's you and I step outside. We men will handle the bill." Kyle's gesture was so casual, as if they were just stepping out for a smoke. Danny stood up immediately, the same smile plastered on his face. "Yes, you men can take care of business out here. The ladies can relax." I looked at Kevin. He glanced back at me, his eyes a mixture of apology and helplessness. Before I could say a word, the heavy wooden door clicked shut. The sound wasn't loud, but it made my heart sink like a stone. Now it was just me, Sharon, and two waitresses in the room. The festive atmosphere instantly deflated, like a balloon with a slow leak. When the music stops, but the dim lights stay on, every small sound becomes amplified. Sharon leaned back in her chair, stared at the closed door, and then turned to me, her voice sharp. "Why do you have to make such a big deal out of everything? It's a holiday, we were having a good time." I set my teacup down, my voice still gentle. "I wasn't making a big deal. I just wanted clarity." She snorted, her eyes darting to my wrist. That look made the sapphire bracelet feel heavier than ever. I pulled my sleeve down a bit more, but it was too late. Just as I was about to stand up and go to the door, two men in dark shirts appeared from nowhere and positioned themselves in the hallway, right outside our room. One was tall, the other short. They didn't look like customers. They looked like they were on duty. They weren't looking directly inside, but their stance was clear. They were blocking the exit. A waitress brought a new pitcher of water, set it on the table, and scurried away as if afraid of being held back. I watched her go. She couldn't hold my gaze. Her fear confirmed it. What Sarah had told me wasn't an exaggeration. One of the men outside stepped into the doorway, a polite smile on his face that didn't reach his eyes. "Ma'am, it's quite busy out here. To be safe, why don't you let me hold onto your phone for you? It would be a shame if it got lost." His words were soft, but his outstretched hand was a demand. I looked up at him and gave a cool smile. "Thank you for the offer, but I can keep it safe myself. Besides, the battery is low. I'll need to charge it soon." He didn't retract his hand, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Just give it to me, ma'am. I'll keep it at the front desk where it's secure." My tone didn't change. I clutched my purse tighter. I don't have a habit of giving my phone to strangers. If anything happens, I'll take responsibility. A beat of silence fell over the table. Sharon stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Leah, what are you doing?" "He's just trying to be helpful." I turned to her, and for the first time, my voice lost its deferential edge. "Mom, no, Sharon asterisk. Do you really want me to give my phone to a stranger to hold?" Sharon flinched at the use of her first name. It was a small but sharp jab at her sense of propriety. But I wasn't trying to be disrespectful. I was trying to save myself. When someone wants to hold your phone, it means they want to control your communication. The man stared at me for a second, then smirked. "Have it your way." He turned and stood even closer to the doorway, his posture a clear statement. Asterisk, keep your phone, but you're not going anywhere. Asterisk, I sat back down, my hands clasped in my lap to hide their trembling. I wasn't afraid of a physical fight. I was afraid of losing my composure. One wrong word, one wrong move, and they would seize on it to paint me as the one causing trouble. Sharon was getting agitated. She picked up her own phone, tapped at it, then put it down, her lips pressed into a thin line. I knew she was thinking more about the loss of face than the possibility of being scammed. To her, being scammed could be explained away. Public humiliation could not. "Look at you," she hissed, her voice filled with anxiety. "What if people say our family dined and dashed?" I looked her straight in the eye. "If the price is right, we pay. If it's wrong, we don't bow down." Sharon let out a dry, humorless laugh. You talk a good game, but do you have any idea how connected everyone is in this town? Connections don't change the law, I replied. I said no more. Arguing in a closed room would be playing right into their hands, just as Sarah had warned. I shifted my focus to observation. In the top corner of the room, a small security camera blinked with a red light. A painting of fish hung on the wall, its glass frame reflecting a sliver of the doorway. I positioned myself so my wrist wasn't entirely hidden, not to show off the bracelet, but so that if anyone tried to grab it, the camera would have a clear view. Under the table, I opened my phone without looking at the screen for too long. My text to Mark had been sent. I didn't send another. I just turned on the voice recorder and let the screen go dark. In my purse, I had a portable power bank. I took it out and placed it on the table, a plausible reason to keep my phone with me. A waitress came in. More water, ma'am? I nodded. A glass of warm water, please. She gave me a quick, pitying look before hurrying away. Sharon's anxiety was palpable. She tapped her fingernails on the table, a rhythmic, nervous beat. She turned to me, her voice low but sharp. Don't you dare make a scene. You hear me? This family still has a reputation to uphold. I looked at her, my composure cold. A reputation can't be bought by throwing your daughter-in-law to the wolves. She was about to retort when the door opened. Danny peeked in, his smile back in place. The ladies can just relax for a moment. The men are just double-checking the bill to make sure it's perfect. He closed the door quickly, before I could ask a question. I heard the word perfect and wanted to laugh. Perfect for whom? Perfect for the bill, or perfect for the trap. In that moment, I knew I was being systematically isolated. They had separated Kevin from me to prevent him from listening to me, from consulting with me. And while he was being handled man-to-man, they were using his mother's obsession with appearances to pressure me inside the room. On one side, my mother-in-law's pride. On the other, a blocked doorway. They wanted me to willingly open my wallet, perhaps even to offer up my bracelet. I touched my wrist. The sapphire was cool against my skin. I wasn't going to beg anyone in this room. I just silently repeated a phrase my mother often used. In life, you can recover from losing money, but you carry the shame of losing your honor forever. I sat up straight, a polite smile fixed on my face to give them no excuse to call me disruptive, and kept my mind clear, ready for the moment the door opened again. I would not take a single wrong step. The heavy wooden door swung open again, not with a bang, but with a presence that silenced the room. Danny entered first, followed by Kyle and Kevin. Kevin walked slowly, his face ashen, his lips pressed into a thin, hard line. Kyle was still trying to smile, the strained grin of someone desperately pretending everything was fine. Danny placed a long, itemized receipt on the table. He didn't drop it, nor did he place it gently. He set it down the way one places a knife on a cutting board, waiting for the other person to notice the blade. All settled up for you, he said, his voice as sweet as honey. I glanced down. The number in bold at the bottom leaped off the page. Asterisk asterisk $6,200 asterisk asterisk. The room fell completely silent. I could hear the hum of the air conditioner, the faint tap of Sharon's fingernail freezing mid-tap. How? How much? Sharon stammered, performing a moment of disbelief for show before whipping her head toward me like a predator. Leah, what is the meaning of this? It's a holiday. Kevin stared at the bill, his voice trembling. Why is it so much, Danny? Danny shrugged, still smiling. It's the holidays, my friend. You ordered all the top-shelf items, plus the VIP room, which has a separate service charge and a room fee. The system just calculates it all. I pulled the bill closer, my eyes scanning it rapidly. In addition to the food, there were several lines. VIP combo, premium liquor, private service fee, and room charge. The words were polite, but they felt like thorns. I asked directly, my voice steady. May I please see the official, posted price list and the original menu? And please explain the items I don't recall anyone ordering. Kyle immediately jumped in, his tone light but his intention heavy. Come on, Leah. We ate the food, now we pay. Don't make a scene on a holiday. Sharon slammed her hand lightly on the table, her eyes bulging. That's right. You ate the food, and now you're questioning the bill? People will laugh us out of town. I turned to her, my words precise. I'm not refusing to pay. I am refusing to pay for what isn't right. Danny crossed his arms, raising an eyebrow. Ma'am, you're making things difficult for me. Our policy is, you dine, we tally. All our VIP guests understand this. I smirked. So, Being a VIP means you don't get to know the prices in advance. The air in the room thickened. Kevin stood between us, looking from me to his mother like a man trapped between two cliffs. I didn't need him to choose a side right now. I just needed him not to be silent. Sharon turned to him, her voice a command. Kevin, talk to her. Your wife is making a scene. She's going to humiliate this entire family. Kevin opened his mouth, but before he could speak, Kyle pulled out his phone, holding the screen up for me to see. You can stop talking, Leah. I've got it all on video. On the screen, the clip played back the moment Sharon had filmed me, my voice clear as day. I hope everyone enjoys the meal. Kyle paused the video, a triumphant sneer on his face. See? You said it yourself. Sounds like you were treating everyone, doesn't it? You made the offer. Now you pay. I stared at the screen, a cold dread washing over me. A simple, polite phrase had been twisted into an admission of liability. I wasn't angry at myself for saying it. If I hadn't, they would have found another way. I was disgusted by how they had been waiting to capture the perfect, misleading soundbite. I took a deep breath and looked directly at Kyle. You know perfectly well that was a polite toast, not a financial commitment. Don't try to change the meaning. He shrugged. Out there, nobody cares about your explanation. They'll just watch the video. Sharon seized on his words. Exactly. They'll just watch the video. Do you want me to be branded a scammer by the whole town? I turned to Danny. You're the owner. You know the law. A holiday toast is not a binding contract. Show me the price list and the original menu. Let's go through it, item by item. Danny's smile faded, his voice taking on a harder edge. If you want to get technical, feel free to call the police. I run a legitimate business. I have nothing to hide. But as he said it, his eyes darted toward the door, where the two men in dark shirts still stood. That glance betrayed him more than any words could. At the mention of the police, Sharon went pale. She gritted her teeth and turned to me. Leah, if you call the police, you will be the death of me. I live for my reputation, do you understand? I looked at her, a cold realization dawning on me. Some people fear losing money. She feared losing face more. And that fear was exactly what they were using to blackmail me. Kevin took a step forward, his voice hoarse. Danny, maybe you could just show us the price for each item. If there's a mistake, we can fix it. Danny waved his hand dismissively. The system is what it is. And Kevin, man to man, we already talked. When you have a good time, you see it through to the end. The phrase "see it through" felt like the tightening of a noose. I took out my phone, not holding it up, but placing it firmly on the table in front of me. I spoke slowly, each word deliberate. I have photos of the menu I took when we arrived. I have a voice recording of the conversation since the food started arriving. I also have the location and the exact time. If you want to settle the bill, let's do it transparently. But if you are detaining us, blocking the door, and attempting to coerce payment, that is another matter entirely. No one was smiling anymore. Kyle was silent. Danny stared at me, a muscle twitching in his jaw, like a hunter who just realized his prey wasn't going to lie down. Sharon turned to me, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. Who do you think you're threatening? You are a part of this family. You need to know your place. I hadn't even responded when her gaze locked onto my wrist. Her eyes were no longer those of a mother-in-law scolding a daughter-in-law. They were the eyes of someone desperately seeking an escape route, using someone else's assets. She swallowed hard, her voice trembling with a forced resolve. Just pay it and let's go. Worst case, we can pawn that bracelet to cover it. Making a scene will only bring us more shame. Her words landed like a physical blow. The sapphire bracelet, a cherished gift from my own mother, was now being discussed as collateral. I looked at Sharon, then at Kevin. His face was white as a sheet. I saw something break in his eyes, as if he finally understood that keeping the peace sometimes means paving the way for others to walk all over you. I pulled up my sleeve, letting the bracelet show clearly under the dim yellow light. My voice was not loud, but it was as hard as stone. No one is touching this bracelet. Money can be repaid. Dignity cannot be pawned. In the sealed VIP room, the air conditioner hummed steadily, but I felt a burning heat on my wrist where the cool sapphire lay. I knew, in that moment, if I took one step back, they would advance 10. And the price this time wasn't just a number on a bill. I looked at the sapphire bracelet on my wrist, as if I could see my own mother's hand on the day she gave it to me, her touch trembling but firm. My mother wasn't wealthy or boastful, but she had taught me something I carried with me always. Asterisk. You can be poor in money, but never be poor in character. Asterisk. Yet here, in a brightly lit restaurant on a holiday weekend, my mother-in-law was telling me to sell a piece of my dignity to buy 2 words: less shame. I gave a humorless laugh. Could you repeat that for me, please? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Sharon was taken aback by my tone, but her pride wouldn't let her back down. Don't you twist my words. A bracelet is just a thing. We can pawn it to settle this, and I'll figure it out later. If we make a scene, the whole town will know, and I'll have to hide my face in shame. The words stung. In the space of one fraudulent bill, I had gone from her daughter to an object of scorn. It was clear how thin the bonds of affection were here. Kyle immediately chimed in, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Leah, you're clutching that bracelet like it's a holy relic. The important thing now is to resolve this quietly. If you blow this up, how are you going to face anyone? I turned to Kyle, my gaze stripped of all politeness. Don't you talk to me in that tone. You know exactly what's happening here today. He shrugged. I don't know what you're talking about. All I see is that we ate, and now we have to pay. What's wrong with that? Danny then stepped forward, his voice still polite but with a new, steely undertone. Ma'am, please understand. This is a business. Prices are higher during the holidays, especially for a VIP room. If you don't want a scene, let's handle this quietly. I pointed toward the door. Quietly? Is that why you have men blocking the exit? Danny glanced at the door and forced a laugh. Oh, them? They're just security. It gets crowded on holidays, just making sure there's no trouble. I nodded, as if taking note of his testimony. Good. Then please ask them to step aside so I can go outside and call a family member to come and discuss this. A beat of silence. Danny didn't answer. His silence said everything. I turned to Kevin. Kevin, do you see now? If they were legitimate, they wouldn't be afraid of me stepping outside. Kevin, who had been standing as if frozen, suddenly moved. He stepped forward, partially shielding me with his body. His voice was hoarse, but for the first time, it held no trace of evasion. Danny, tell your men to move. If my wife wants to make a call, she's going to make a call. Danny's eyes narrowed. Kevin, you're making this very difficult for me. Kevin clenched his fists, his lip trembling. Difficult? Why? Because you're afraid of the police? Is that it? Kyle yelped. Kevin, what are you saying? If you make a scene, you'll kill Mom. Sharon was horrified. Kevin, are you crazy? Do you want me to be humiliated? Kevin spun around to face her. It was the first time in his life I'd heard him speak to his mother with such force. Mom, humiliation is telling my wife to pawn her mother's bracelet. Do you even hear yourself? Sharon was speechless. She had likely never imagined her son would dare to question her so directly. I looked at Kevin, a pang in my chest, not of sappy emotion, but of pain. Pain that if only he had said this sooner, I wouldn't have had to stand my ground alone for so long. I placed my phone on the table, directly in front of Danny, my voice firm. Let me be clear. I have a voice recording. I have photos of the doctored menu. I have a picture of the room number. I have already sent my location to a contact in the sheriff's department. If you want to settle this bill, we will verify it against a legitimate price list. If you continue to detain us, block the door, and try to coerce us, that is a different crime entirely. Kyle scoffed. Who do you think you're scaring? Who do you think you are? I looked him straight in the eye. I'm a person being extorted, and I know how to protect myself. Danny wasn't smiling anymore. The affable host was gone, replaced by a man with cold eyes. He picked up the bill and tapped it on the table. You want to call the cops? Go ahead. I've got all my paperwork in order. Good, I replied instantly. Let's get it all out in the open. Sharon suddenly lunged forward, grabbing my arm. She tried to lower her voice, but it was laced with venom. Leah, I'm begging you. Just pay it. Don't make my life miserable. My reputation is all I have. I pulled my arm away. My wrist burned, not from pain, but from the insult. I looked at her and said with absolute clarity, if your reputation is all you have, then don't try to trade my dignity for it. She was rendered speechless. At that exact moment, we heard purposeful footsteps in the hallway, not the light scuff of a waitress, but the heavy, rhythmic tread of boots. I looked toward the door. The 2 men blocking the entrance suddenly shifted, their eyes darting nervously. A man's voice called out, sharp and authoritative. Where is VIP room 3? I let out a long, slow breath. I hadn't known if Mark would come, or how quickly, but I knew I had done the right thing. I had not argued inside the trap. I had not traded my heirloom for a moment of false peace. And most importantly, I had not allowed my silence to be used as their blank check. The door to the VIP room opened again. This time, it wasn't Danny. It was a man in plain clothes, with a solid build and a serious expression. He surveyed the room, his gaze finally landing on me. "Are you Leah Harris?" I nodded, my throat dry but my voice steady. "Yes, that's me." In that instant, I saw Kyle's face drain of color, saw Sharon clutch the arm of her chair, saw Danny freeze like a statue. And I understood that the piece they wanted to force me to buy with my sapphire bracelet had just lost all its value the moment the truth walked into the room. Deputy Mark entered, his presence immediately cooling the overheated room. Two other officers followed, one holding a notepad, the other carefully observing the surroundings. They weren't in full uniform, but their authority was unmistakable. The time for slick talk was over. "Good afternoon," Mark said, his voice calm but firm. "We received a report regarding some irregularities with billing and the possible detainment of a customer." He turned to Danny. "Are you the manager or the owner here?" Danny was still trying to smile. "I'm the owner, officer. Just a little holiday misunderstanding. You know how it gets." Mark didn't interrupt, just continued. "I'll need to see your business license, your officially posted price list, and any written policy regarding holiday surcharges." Sharon sat rigid in her chair, her face shifting from red to pale as she gripped the armrest. Kyle hovered behind Danny, his lips sealed, all his earlier bravado gone. I remained quiet, my phone on the table. I knew that in situations like this, emotional outbursts don't help. Only facts do. Mark turned to me. "Ma'am, could you please recount the events from the beginning? What time you arrived, who ordered what, and whether you were informed of the prices?" I nodded. I looked around the room at Danny, at Kyle, at Sharon, then began to speak, my voice as even as if I were reading a report. "We arrived shortly before noon. A staff member greeted us by my mother-in-law's name, Mrs. Miller, and led us to VIP room 3. When I tried to check the menu, many items were listed as market price or inquire with staff, and some prices were covered with stickers. When I asked for specific prices, the waitress told us to enjoy the meal and it would be tallied at the end." Mark gestured for his colleague to take notes. I continued, sticking to the facts. "During the meal, dishes we didn't order were brought to the table. I then excused myself to the restroom. When I returned, my brother-in-law took my husband outside, saying they would handle the bill. The door was then closed, and men were positioned outside, blocking the way. One of them asked me to hand over my phone. At this, Mark looked up, his gaze locking onto the two men in dark shirts still loitering in the hallway. Just that one look was enough to make them avert their eyes and shuffle away from the door. Danny quickly interjected, "Officer, they're just security, for crowd control." Mark's question was sharp. "Does your security have the authority to demand a customer's personal property?" Danny was speechless. Mark turned back to me. "And the bill?" I slid the receipt toward him, pointing to the bottom line. It was $6,200. It includes a VIP combo, premium liquor, and separate room and service fees, none of which were disclosed to us beforehand. When I asked for the official price list, I was told that holiday VIP pricing was different. Mark took the bill, studied it, and then spoke to his colleague. "Check the establishment's posted price list. Demand the manager produce it immediately. If they can't, note the violation." Sharon, finally finding her voice, stammered, "Officer, we were just having a nice family meal. It's all a misunderstanding. Please don't make a big deal of it." Mark looked at her, his tone still polite but firm. "Ma'am, rest assured, we will follow procedure. If no laws were broken, no one will be troubled. If they were, it will be addressed." Hearing that felt like a knot loosening in my chest. Asterisk. The righteous are bold as a lion. Asterisk. It's true, but even a lion needs a witness when someone else is holding the axe. Danny grew flustered, calling for an employee to get the paperwork for the officer, for the gentleman to inspect. A young waitress ran off. Kyle stood by, his eyes darting around the room. I caught his gaze, and he quickly looked away, as if afraid I could see right through him. Mark continued, "Where is your point-of-sale system? Who generated this bill?" "At the front desk," Danny said quickly. "But the system's been a bit glitchy today. I'm rebooting it." Mark cut him off. "Don't reboot anything. Don't touch it. You will escort me to the front desk now." We'll be securing the data on site for review. Any attempt to alter it will be noted as an additional offense. Danny stood frozen. The charming, great deal host had vanished. Kevin finally stepped up beside me, his voice raw. "Officer, thank you. My wife, she was worried from the start." Mark gave a slight nod. "We just need everyone's cooperation now." Sharon turned on Kevin, her eyes blazing. "What have you done? Kevin, you let them come in here. How can I ever show my face in this town again?" Kevin looked at his mother, his gaze unwavering. "How can you show your face? Maybe you should first think about how you treated my wife." Sharon was silenced. I said nothing more, but a chill ran through me. When someone is terrified of losing face, they can use their own daughter-in-law as a human shield. Mark and his team had the VIP room door opened, inspected the hallway, and noted the presence of the men who had been blocking the exit. I showed him the photos of the menu and the voice recording. He looked at them and said simply, "This will be very helpful." Soon, the waitress returned with a binder of papers. Danny presented it. "Here you go, officer. All our paperwork." Mark flipped through it. "Where is this price list posted for customers to see?" Danny stammered. We keep it behind the counter. It's been busy for the holidays." Mark made a note, then turned to me. "Did anyone warn you about this?" I nodded. "Yes. The waitress, Sarah." I looked around. Sarah was standing near the doorway, her face pale, her hands twisting her apron. I walked over to her and spoke softly, just loud enough for her to hear. "Just tell the truth. I won't let you face this alone." Sarah looked up, her eyes welling with tears. She nodded, then spoke to Mark in a small voice. "Yes, sir. When customers ask for prices, we're told to say it will all be tallied at the end." I was afraid she would end up like the others. Kyle snapped. "Sarah, what are you talking about?" Mark turned sharply to Kyle. "Are you an employee of this establishment?" Kyle froze. "No, sir. I'm a guest. With my family." "Then you have no right to intimidate a witness who is cooperating with our inquiry," Mark stated flatly. Kyle went silent, his face turning from red to white. Finally, Mark delivered his on-the-spot assessment. "This establishment shows signs of failing to clearly post prices, applying undisclosed surcharges, and potentially impeding a customer's freedom of movement. We are opening an official investigation, confiscating the bill and menu, and securing the POS data for forensic analysis." Danny looked like all the air had been sucked out of him. Sharon slumped in her chair, staring into space. As for me, I didn't feel the triumphant glee I might have imagined. I just felt light, because the sapphire bracelet was still on my wrist. And because finally, someone had called the truth by its name. I don't remember exactly when we left the restaurant, only the feeling of stepping outside into the fresh air, like escaping a room starved of oxygen. The cold town wind stung my eyes. Kevin stood close beside me, his hands still trembling slightly. Sharon walked behind us, muttering to herself, "Humiliating, so humiliating, on a holiday." Kyle trailed at the very back, silent. His silence wasn't remorse, it was fear. Fear of being exposed. Deputy Mark asked us to come to the station to give a formal statement. I agreed. I understood that if this trap wasn't fully dismantled, another person would be pushed into the same dark corner I had been. At the station, the fluorescent lights and the smell of old paper felt familiar, like I was back in my element. Everything required evidence. Mark sat across from me. "Okay, Leah, just calmly, one more time. We'll cross-reference the timeline." I recounted the story again, this time with more detail. The time of arrival, when each dish was served, when I went to the restroom, when the door was closed, when the bill appeared. I didn't speak like a victim. I spoke like someone logging a work incident, ensuring no word could be twisted. While I was talking, another officer brought in a stack of documents and a printout from the restaurant's POS system. I didn't understand the technical details, but I could see that some dishes were entered into the system at times that didn't match when they were ordered. Surcharges were added at the very end, like a final flourish for a VIP guest. Mark pointed to the printout. "Look here. In the same time frame today, several other VIP tables were billed in a similar pattern. VIP combo, room fee, private service fee, premium liquor. It wasn't just your family." A chill went down my spine. It wasn't a personal attack. It was a business model, a net waiting for the right kind of customer to swim into it. Danny was being questioned in another part of the room, still trying to defend himself. "We charge according to our VIP policy." Mark's question was simple. "Is that policy posted?" Was it disclosed to the customer beforehand? Danny mumbled something about holiday price fluctuations. Mark didn't argue. He just placed another piece of paper on the table. Then maybe you can explain this. I looked. My heart skipped a beat. It was a printout of what looked like an internal memo, not an official document, but it revealed their entire strategy. It was a list of bullet points. I didn't read them all, but a few phrases jumped out. Asterisk large group. Prideful. Has assets. Easy to pressure. Asterisk. And, at the bottom, one line made my hands go cold. Asterisk. NYC DIL. Blue sapphire bracelet. Asterisk. I shot my head up, my eyes no longer on the paper, but locked on Kyle. He was staring at the floor, not out of respect, but to avoid the gaze of someone who had just been unmasked. Sharon looked like she had been slapped. She stared at the words, her lips trembling. What is this? NYCDIL? Sapphire bracelet? Who wrote this? Mark asked. Ma'am, do you recognize who NYCDIL might be? Sharon looked at me, her eyes wide, then swiveled to Kyle. Kyle, what did you say? Kyle stammered. I don't know anything about that. Just friends talking nonsense. I laughed, a cold, empty sound. Nonsense that describes your sister-in-law down to the last detail? Kyle flinched, snapping back defensively. Well, everyone can see you're wearing a bracelet. I enunciated each word. Seeing it is one thing. Writing it down as a way to easily pressure someone is something else entirely. The air in the room grew heavy and dry. Kevin sat silently, his eyes red. I looked at him and saw that for the first time, he was no longer standing in the middle. He was standing on the side of a very painful truth. Mark pressed Kyle. You were the one who recommended this restaurant to your family? Kyle swallowed hard. Yes, sir. I know the place. Then please explain why the restaurant would have a note specifically targeting the NYCDIL with the blue sapphire bracelet. Who gave them that information? Kyle shook his head frantically. I didn't. I don't know. Kevin suddenly shot to his feet, his voice raspy with emotion. Kyle, tell the truth. You brought us here. You kept saying my wife was a big spender. You filmed her for a video. Just tell the truth. Kyle shrank back, still trying to deflect. Kevin, I just wanted Mom to have a nice time. I looked at him and said slowly, did you want Mom to have a nice time? Or did you want to get a kickback? Kyle froze. My question had hit its mark. Danny shot him a look that screamed, asterisk, don't you dare, asterisk. Mark placed another paper on the table. We have a preliminary statement from an employee, mentioning a policy where the person who brings in a party gets a percentage of the bill. Mr. Miller, do you know anything about that? Sharon whipped around to face Kyle. A percentage? What percentage? Kyle's face was ashen. His lips trembled, and then the words tumbled out, as if forced from his throat. Danny, he said he'd help me out. For every table I brought in, he'd give me a little something for gas money. The room imploded in on itself with a deafening silence. No one screamed, but I could practically hear the sound of something shattering inside Sharon. She lived for appearances, and her own son had just used her pride as bait. How much? Mark asked. Kyle's head was bowed. About $150 per table. Sharon gasped, as if someone had punched her in the gut. Oh, God, you took money to lead your own sister-in-law into a trap? Kyle started to cry, or pretend to cry. I couldn't tell. He just sobbed. I didn't know it would be like this. Danny said he'd give us a great deal. And she works in New York. I cut him off, my voice ice. And working in New York means I deserve to be scammed? Kevin turned his face away, his shoulders shaking slightly. I knew he was blaming himself more than anyone. This trap wasn't just the restaurant. It was his own silence over the years, which had allowed his mother and brother to grow accustomed to seeing his wife as someone who would just bear the weight. Mark concluded, his tone official. We will continue to investigate the fraudulent billing practices and the potential unlawful detainment of customers. This establishment will be subject to a full audit. Danny sat motionless. Kyle kept his head down, his face a ghostly white. Sharon looked at me, her expression a mixture of fear and resentment. But this time, her resentment wasn't for me making a scene. It was for the truth that had stripped her of her carefully constructed facade. As for me, I looked at the line times NYC deal, blue sapphire bracelet times one last time. A cold, typed phrase. But it made me understand one thing with absolute clarity. If I had not been vigilant today, That bracelet would be in a pawn shop, and I would be carrying that shame for the rest of my life. People say you reap what you sow. I didn't wish a storm on anyone, but I knew that a storm had just begun to brew inside my husband's home. By the time we left the station, the sun was setting. The West Virginia wind was cold, but the chill on my skin was more bearable than the one in my heart. I walked close to Kevin, not for support, but because I felt if I let my guard down for a second, the accusations would wash over me again like a flood. Sharon walked ahead, her shoulders rigid. She wasn't crying, just taking sharp, heavy breaths like someone trying to swallow a stone. Kyle trailed behind, head bowed. His posture didn't evoke pity, only disappointment. He was bowing his head out of fear, not remorse. As we neared the house, I could hear whispers. A few neighbors were clustered by a nearby fence, munching on holiday cookies, their eyes fixed on us. In a small town, news travels fast. The phrase police at the restaurant was all it took for them to add their own embellishments. One of them called out with a syrupy smile, "Oh, the Millers are back. I heard you all had a fancy times dinner tonight." The word fancy was sweet, but her look was sharp as a needle. Sharon's face turned ashen. She hurried into the yard without a word, as if trying to escape their gazes. But the more she tried to hide, the more curious they became. Inside the living room, Sharon threw her purse onto a chair and spun around to face me. Before anyone could even get a drink of water, she unleashed her fury. "This is all your fault. It was a perfectly fine holiday, and you had to blow it up and make us the laughingstock of this town." I remained standing. I knew if I sat down, she would see it as a sign of submission. "I didn't blow it up," I said slowly. "I did what was right." She pointed a finger at me. "Right? What's right about it? Someone offers you a meal, you pay for it. You're a daughter-in-law, and you have no sense of decency. You let the police into our private room. You've ruined this family's reputation." I looked at her, my voice quiet but unyielding. This family's reputation wasn't ruined because I called for help. It was tarnished the moment someone decided to use their daughter-in-law as bait to make a quick buck. Kyle, who had been hiding by the kitchen doorway, shot back. "Who are you calling bait? Don't you dare accuse me. I just wanted to have a nice dinner." I turned to him. "Nice enough to get paid per table?" He flinched and looked to his mother for help. "Mom, I made a mistake." Sharon whirled on Kyle and slapped his shoulder. Not hard, but enough to sting. "You think you haven't humiliated me enough?" Then, she turned her anger back to me. "But you're still the daughter-in-law. You should have known to be patient. If there was a problem, we should have handled it behind closed doors. Why did you have to air our dirty laundry for the whole world to see?" The word patient made me laugh. A dry, hollow sound. Patient how? Patient enough for them to demand the bracelet my mother gave me. Kevin, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was hoarse but clear. "Mom, stop. Do you have any idea what you said? You told my wife to pawn her bracelet." Sharon froze. "I said that to keep the peace." Kevin looked her straight in the eye, and for the first time, he didn't back down. "Keep the peace by sacrificing my wife? If she hadn't had evidence today, how far were you going to let them push her?" Sharon was speechless. There was no answer that could both preserve her pride and be morally right. All she could do was lash out. "What kind of son are you? Defending your wife against your own mother?" Kevin's jaw tightened. "I'm not against you, Mom. I'm against what's wrong." His words fell into the room with the finality of a dropped plate. I said nothing more. I knew that sentence was more important than anything I could say. A man doesn't need to be eloquent. He just needs to speak up at the right time. Kyle changed his tune, shifting to blame. "You talk a big game, Kevin, but Leah's not innocent either. She's the one who had to make it a federal case, recording everything, taking pictures like she's some kind of detective." I looked at Kyle, my expression calm. "I recorded and took pictures to protect myself. Without that proof, do you really think we would have just paid and gone home peacefully? Or would you have shown everyone that video and claimed I had offered to pay for everything?" Kyle had no answer. Sharon started wailing again. "I'm just so afraid people will say I don't know how to raise a daughter-in-law. So disrespectful, calling the authorities." My voice was colder now. "You're afraid of what people will say. But you weren't afraid for your daughter-in-law when she was trapped in a room with men guarding the door? The innocent have nothing to fear. I did nothing wrong. So I am not afraid of what anyone says." As if I had struck a nerve, she screamed, "You think you're so smart? Then pack your bags and go back where you came from. Don't stay here and humiliate me." The air grew thick. An order to leave on a holiday weekend was enough to sever any remaining thread of affection. I looked at Kevin. He looked back, his eyes red but steady. He spoke slowly. Mom, if you're kicking her out, you're kicking me out too. I am not leaving my wife here alone. Sharon stood there, stunned into silence. She had likely never imagined her son would ever place his wife on equal footing with her in a moment of choice. I hadn't won anything in this argument. I just felt tired. Tired of having to stand up straight in front of people who were constantly trying to push me down. I picked up my purse, not making a big show of it, and said just loud enough to be heard, I'm leaving. Not because I'm wrong, but because I refuse to spend another minute here listening to my dignity be put on a scale. Sharon turned her face away, breathing heavily. Kyle stood frozen, unable to meet my eye. Kevin went into our room, got my coat, and then put on his own. He didn't say be patient again. He just placed a hand on my shoulder, a light but firm touch. As we reached the yard, I could still hear the neighbors buzzing like a disturbed hive. But strangely, I didn't feel afraid anymore. I was reminded of an old saying, better to have substance without a reputation than a reputation without substance. My dignity wasn't found in the gossip of others. It was found in the fact that I had not sold myself cheap for a moment of false peace. We walked out the gate. The wind was biting and cold. I pulled my sleeve down, and my fingers brushed against the sapphire bracelet. It was still there, a reminder that some things are worth holding on to, even when your entire family-in-law turns their back on you. We walked out the gate without looking back, not for dramatic effect, but because looking back would only have shown us one more time that we were seen as thorns in their side. The mountain wind whipped my face, so cold my lips felt numb. Kevin pulled my collar up for me, then took my purse from my shoulder without a word. We had walked for a bit when he finally spoke, his voice low. Are you cold? I shook my head. I'm not cold. I'm just empty. Empty. As if a piece of my trust had been carved out, leaving a void that couldn't be filled. We got a ride to the next town. The mountain roads were quieter on a Sunday, but my heart still felt like it was on a bumpy bus ride. Some jolts don't come from the road. They come from the words of your family. The phrase pawn that bracelet kept replaying in my mind, a stain I couldn't seem to wipe clean. Kevin drove slowly. I saw him grip the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles were white. He was wrestling with his anger, his shame, and his regret. As we neared the bus station, he pulled over to the side of the road, shut off the engine, and a heavy silence filled the car. I thought he was going to have a cigarette, but he didn't. He just stared straight ahead, and then, unexpectedly, his voice cracked. I'm sorry. I turned to look at him. He kept his eyes fixed on the road, as if afraid he would break down if he looked at me. Sorry for today? I asked. He shook his head, his voice hoarse. No, I'm sorry for all these years. He let out a long breath. I always thought being patient was the right thing to do. I thought keeping quiet to keep the peace was being a good son. But I was just leaving you to carry everything alone. I didn't answer right away. I let him finish. Sometimes, if an apology is cut short, it becomes just another empty phrase. He continued, his voice dropping lower. Today, when Mom said to pawn your bracelet, I felt like the worst person in the world. The worst, because I let you hear those words in what was supposed to be your own family. I looked at his hands on the wheel. Those hands had fixed wiring, held tools, and cradled my head when I was sick, but they had also gone limp every time his mother spoke harshly. I knew he wasn't a bad person. He was just a coward when it came to a misguided sense of filial duty. And cowardice, practiced long enough, becomes a habit. I spoke slowly. Kevin, I don't need you to be a hero. I just need you to be on the side of what's right. You were late today, but you still showed up. He finally turned to me, his eyes red. I was always so afraid of upsetting Mom, of what the neighbors would say, of her losing face. It never occurred to me that you had a face to lose too, that you had your own self-respect. I gave a wry smile. You thought of it. You just thought of it second. He bowed his head, his voice a confession. I know. I took out my phone and booked 2 bus tickets to Ohio. I wasn't going back to New York just yet. I wanted to go to my mother's house to breathe, and I wanted Kevin to see what a home that didn't run on public opinion felt like. On the bus, I sat by the window. Outside, the mountains receded, the clouds streaking across the sky. Kevin sat beside me in silence. But this time, it wasn't the silence of avoidance. It was the silence of deep thought. When we got to my hometown in Ohio, it was just dark enough to make you crave a hot bowl of soup. My mother was already waiting on the porch, a wool scarf in her hands. The moment I stepped off the bus, she didn't ask questions. She just pulled me into a hug and stroked my hair. "You're home," she said. Just those 2 words, and a lump formed in my throat. I didn't cry, but my eyes stung. They say a falling leaf returns to its roots. I realized then that roots aren't just a place. They're where you don't have to prove yourself to anyone. Inside, a simple holiday meal was on the table. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, and a small dish of cranberry sauce. No lobster, no abalone, no VIP room. But the smell of a home-cooked meal warmed me from the inside out. My mother looked at Kevin and remained perfectly gracious. "Have a seat and eat, Kevin. We can talk about whatever it is later." Kevin murmured a quiet thank you. He sat down, his hands in his lap like a schoolboy. I could see he was uncomfortable, caught off guard by a kindness that required no audience. Halfway through the meal, my mother's eyes fell on my wrist. She saw the sapphire bracelet was still there. She didn't ask about the restaurant first. She asked something else, something softer but deeper. "It's good that the bracelet is still with you. To lose that would be to lose a part of yourself." I nodded. I told her the story, concisely, without embellishment. My mother listened without casting blame on anyone. She just sighed. In this world, some people are more afraid of losing face than losing their morals. And when that happens, it's their loved ones who suffer first. Kevin kept his head down. I saw his shoulders tremble slightly. Later that night, after my mother had gone to bed, Kevin and I sat on the porch. The Midwestern air wasn't as biting as the mountain wind, just cool. I spoke to him directly. "Kevin, I'm not asking for a divorce right now, but I am setting a boundary. From now on, anything concerning my finances, my dignity, or my privacy, no one gets to decide for me. And you have to be the one to make that clear to your mother." He answered immediately, without hesitation. "I agree." I looked at him. "It's not about agreeing with your words. If you can do it, we move forward. If you fall back into silence for the sake of peace, then one day, I won't want to live in that kind of peace anymore." He nodded emphatically, his eyes glistening. "I understand. I'll do it." I didn't cling to his promise like a life raft. I just filed it away, like a clause in a contract. They say you can't predict the future, but I wasn't trying to outsmart anyone. I just needed to break the habit of silence that had hurt me for so many years. The Ohio night was quiet. Lying in my childhood bed, listening to the wind, I felt a little lighter. Not because everything was resolved, but because for the first time, I didn't feel completely alone in my own marriage. The next few days in Ohio passed quickly, strangely. The holiday spirit was still in the air, but the weight in my heart had lessened. My mother didn't press for details about my in-laws. She just made sure I ate well and got enough sleep. It's the way older people show love. They don't need to hear the whole story, just to know their child is okay. Kevin was different, too. The man who used to say, "Just be patient," was gone. He got up early to help my mom sweep the porch and do the dishes. In the afternoons, we would sit and talk. Our conversations were shorter, but more honest. Once, he murmured, "I always thought keeping the peace was how you keep a family together. I never realized that my kind of peace was pushing you away." I didn't reply immediately, but I felt another piece of the stone in my chest lift. After the weekend, we returned to New York. I thought the incident would fade like the holiday decorations, but life isn't that simple. The moment we got back to our apartment, my phone started buzzing. A text from an unknown number, then a call from my colleague. "Leah, have you seen the news? That restaurant is all over the local media." I don't like putting my personal life online, but in a small town, a story about the police being called to a restaurant during the holidays was bound to spread. I opened my browser and skimmed a few articles. I didn't need to read closely to get the gist. Danny's restaurant had been temporarily shut down pending a full investigation. Other customers had come forward with similar stories of inflated bills, some even saying they were held there for hours until they paid. I stared at the screen for a moment, then closed it. I didn't feel the sense of victory people might expect. I just thought, asterisk, you reap what you sow. Asterisk, the consequences didn't come because I was clever. They came because their wrongdoing had become a habit. But the person I was most concerned about was Sarah, the waitress. 2 days later, she sent me a short text. Asterisk, Leah, they fired me. They said I was a troublemaker. I'm so scared. Asterisk. Just one sentence, and I felt a surge of anger. They were the ones in the wrong, yet they were still trying to silence the person who spoke the truth. I called her immediately. "Where are you?" I asked. Sarah's voice trembled. "I'm at my apartment. I'm afraid to go out." They said if I talk to anyone else, they'll send people to find me. I took a deep breath. I knew this kind of intimidation tactic. It was designed to make people silence themselves. Listen to me, I said firmly. Stay put. Don't go back there alone. Do you want to come to New York? Sarah was quiet for a few seconds. Then she burst into tears. Can I? I'm so scared here. Yes, you can, I replied. I can't promise you'll get rich, but I can promise you an honest job, with a clear salary and a proper contract. No one will ever get to tell you they'll tally it up at the end of your life. After hanging up, I called a friend who managed a chain of convenience stores, a partner of my firm. I was direct. I have a young woman who needs a job urgently. She's honest, hardworking, and has experience with inventory and shift management. She ran into some trouble back home. My friend didn't ask for details. Have her come in for an interview tomorrow. 3 days later, Sarah arrived in New York on an early bus. I met her at the station. She was carrying an old backpack and a plastic bag, looking around like she'd just stepped onto another planet. I handed her a warm bagel. Eat this, I said. Up here, no one will force you to be quiet. She took a bite, and tears started rolling down her cheeks. She spoke between bites. I thought my life was stuck there forever, ma'am. I just replied, the world has a way of working out. You told the truth, and the truth eventually finds a way. I didn't want to make grand promises, because I know life is hard. But at that moment, I saw a light in Sarah's eyes that had been missing in the VIP room. Back in West Virginia, the fallout was swift. Kyle called Kevin. His voice was no longer cocky, just a mumble, like a student being called to the principal's office. Kevin put the phone on speaker. Kevin, can you talk to Leah for me, please? Everyone in town is talking. They're all saying I set people up. I can't even go outside without people staring. Kevin's voice was cold. You're worried about people staring? Did you think about my wife when you were taking your kickback? Kyle went silent. Sharon called, too. She didn't apologize directly, just talked in circles. Kevin, son, tell your wife I was just upset that day. I said things I didn't mean. The whole thing got so big I couldn't handle it. Kevin glanced at me, then spoke into the phone, his voice firm. You couldn't handle it because you were afraid of losing face. My wife couldn't handle it because she was being forced to pawn her mother's bracelet. Have you ever once thought about how she felt? On the other end, there was silence, and then Sharon started to cry. It wasn't her usual performative wail. It was the sound of someone being choked by their own pride. But I didn't soften. I knew that some tears are shed out of fear of loss, not out of true remorse. A week later, Deputy Mark texted me. Danny's restaurant was facing heavy fines and a prolonged suspension while they investigated all of its holiday billing practices. I read the message and put my phone down. And that was that. A restaurant that prided itself on being VIP had collapsed under the weight of its own dirty tricks. Greed truly does lead to ruin. As for Sharon, after the incident, the neighbors stopped dropping by for cheerful holiday chats. Some whispered her pride was her downfall. Others just shook their heads. That youngest son of hers ruined everything. The house she had tried so hard to turn into a stage was now just quiet and cold. Perhaps that was the most fitting punishment for someone who lived for applause. When the clapping stops, all you can hear is the sound of your own breathing. My husband and I returned to our life in New York, but our old pattern of endurance was gone. Kevin called his family and clearly laid out the boundaries. Our finances were our own. No one was allowed to use my name or reputation for their own gain. And no one was to ever again suggest using my property to solve their problems. Hearing him say those words, I knew he had finally conquered his own fear. As for me, I still wore the sapphire bracelet. Not to remember the pain, but to remember that I did not break. I learned that being a daughter-in-law isn't the scary part. The scary part is being a daughter-in-law without boundaries. People can call you difficult, but it's better to be difficult and whole than to be agreeable and broken. The lesson I learned from all this is simple. In a family, you must stand up for what is right and speak out against what is wrong. Don't use keeping the peace as an excuse to tolerate wrongdoing, because a tolerated wrong will grow into a true evil. And never, ever, use your loved ones as a shield for your own pride. Because when you turn back, you might find there's no one left standing beside you. If you found this story compelling and thought-provoking, please leave a like for the channel. If you have any feedback, please share it in the comments below so we can continue to improve. Thank you for listening to the very end. I wish you all good health, peace, and warmth with your families. This is Serene Sunset, signing off. I look forward to seeing you again for our next story.